I've stopped using normal gaming mice. Instead, I've been using this. It's a super lightweight fingertip style mouse which feels extremely effortless to play with. I made the first version of this almost like 2 years ago now, and ever since then, I've been completely obsessed with how to make it even better. Little did I know though, it would eventually lead to this. In the beginning, this was just a personal project, a bit of a fun video for me to work on and kind of upgrade what I was using at the time. But so many of you also wanted to test this thing out that I decided to make it into an actual product, which many of you will recognize as the zeromouse. There's only one problem though, and it's a big one. It's the fact that you need to take the internals out of an existing mouse and put it in this to make it work. Don't get me wrong, the result is absolutely phenomenal. You can make a sub 30 gram wireless gaming mouse. But as I've said before, it's tedious, it's not that cost effective, and it's also pretty wasteful. But not anymore. This is the zeromouse Blade, which I can barely contain my excitement for because it has been a long time coming and it's the first complete zeromouse. You just unbox it and start using it. Not only that, but the specs will absolutely blow your mind. That's because this is using a new ultra lightweight PCB from Final Mouse, which is specifically made to be as minimal and light as possible. So after the last mod kit drop, I knew having a built-in PCB for this thing was the next logical step. But honestly, after looking at different factories and different solutions out there, I knew deep down, like whatever I was going to put in this thing was not going to be the best. Like, plain and simple, it was not going to have the fastest click latency, it was not going to have the best battery life, it might not be stable at high polling rates, definitely would not have the best software experience. But with Final Mouse, you get all of those things. So I had a contact over there and I hit them up. I just said, hey, would you be interested in making a custom solution for the zeromouse? I was expecting the answer to be no, but actually, they were interested. And a few months later, we've got this. They're calling it the Falcon module. It's like the lightest wireless PCB out there, and they actually plan to make this a standalone product for other people like myself who kind of want to make like a DIY solution. But yeah, it's basically the internals of a Final Mouse ULX competition, just shrunken down and made as light as possible. So in the end, this lands at just below 20 grams, and that's 20 grams for absolutely everything. The shell, the PCB, the screws, the battery, the scroll wheel, and even the skates on the bottom. That makes it over 6 grams lighter than the previous zeromouse, which, I mean, at these kind of weights is simply insane. It's like a 25% reduction. In fact, 3 of these would still be lighter than a G Pro Superlight, which many people say already feels extremely light. Imagine then what this feels like to aim with. A lot of that weight saving has come from the new PCB and the battery, thanks to Final Mouse. But the cool thing is there's no hit to battery life compared to their normal ULX because we're still using a full-sized battery. This would have been the cheapest, easiest way to cut down on a few grams, just using like a tiny 1 gram battery, but obviously that wouldn't have been the best experience. Then we've got the switches, which are the Huano Blue Shell pink dots, extremely nice feeling mechanical switches, and I think the blue transparent casing looks really sick in this open shell. More importantly now though, packaging the PCB with the zeromouse now means that I'll be able to properly QC check each copy for the quality of the clicks before each one goes out, something that was previously impossible with a mod kit. Then we have the TTC dustproof rotary encoder as well, and notice how low profile this is compared to what I was using before. The actual scroll wheel position is a lot more comfortable and a lot more suited now to the zeromouse. And then there are subtle, small things, but they still make a difference and have been considered. Things like the shape of the PCB, the standoff positions, both of which really help the stiffness of the entire mouse. Even the sensor position now has been fine-tuned and brought forward a little bit compared to the previous zeromouse models. The Blade will also be fully compatible with Final Mouse's web-based X-Panel software, which is the best in the business, so higher polling rate adjustments, lift-off adjustments, DPI, firmware upgrades, and all of that will be no problem. Speaking of firmware, you're getting all of their wireless optimizations there as well, so click latency in particular is as fast as it gets for wireless mice. The new circuit board is also an opportunity to improve the shell even further, so let's take a look at the zeromouse journey so far. This is the V34, was my first mod kit, which feels like a lifetime ago now, but the shell is 9.5 grams, and it's basically the result of endless experimentation with grip width, grip angle, these reverse triggers, and overall just this completely new style of gaming mouse. I did one batch of these for 1,000 units, and I learned a lot about how it could be improved. 6 months later, I dropped the V35, another 1,000 units, and the main improvements here were this crossbar, which goes between the thumb and the pinky for extra stiffness. I also added deep grooves on the contact points, making it a lot more comfortable to use, and it's also 1.5 grams lighter than before. And then we've got the zeromouse blade, and the main objective for this one was to truly optimize the mass versus stiffness of the model. In other words, how light, but also how strong can I make this thing? Can I take some mass and volume from some areas that don't really require it, like here, and add it to, the grip points, areas where that mass is really required to strengthen it up. And the result is by far the best zeromouse that I've ever made. In total, I've been able to reduce the weight a further 1.6 grams or 20%, while making it much stiffer around the grip points than before. The zeromouse as well is still 3D printed, which I know will surprise a lot of you. Don't worry, it's printed on very expensive 3D printers, and it's an advanced material called nylon PA12. I have thought about moving to injection molding a couple of times now. It would require me to change the design quite drastically, especially what we have right here. But the reality is, this mass versus stiffness optimized unibody shell is only possible with 3D printing. I know a lot of people will hear 3D printed and just assume this is the budget, cheap approach, and I don't blame you. I kind of get that impression as well. You take a look at your cheap budget filament 3D printers. Don't worry, this is not that. I'll also mention that versus injection molding, this is way less cost effective and way less time effective as well. The main advantage it brings though is that you can create the most advanced 3D models that you can imagine. Just take a look at the new McLaren W1 or the new Bugatti, which have some of these parts 3D printed, or even the new Singer 21C, which is an up-and-coming supercar. That thing is almost entirely 3D printed. So with the concrete decision to stick with 3D printing for the zeromouse blade, I leaned into it even harder than I had with the previous models. Let's design things and add little features that are impossible with injection molding, simply because we can. And looking at the new 6.4 gram shell, it is insane that this is printed in a single piece. Now, when I made the first version of this in my garage on a really cheap resin 3D printer, I had a very distinct feeling when I started playing games with it. It's a bit hard to describe, but it was just like pure enjoyment mixed with disbelief. Almost as if I was dreaming, because what I was playing with, the way it felt, I had never experienced any gaming mouse like that before, and it didn't even seem real. Throughout all the different versions of the zeromouse and all of these incremental improvements, don't get me wrong, it's gotten really good, but I've yet to have that same level up feeling as I had back then with that cheap resin model. Until now, the moment I put this prototype on my desk, I couldn't believe how it felt. Simply put, sub 20 grams with all of these optimizations feels absolutely unreal. The weightless tracking, the way that you can react and micro-correct so effortlessly, it feels like I'm holding nothing. And look, there are plenty of top-tier mice out there, I recommend a lot of them, and I'll always say you don't need something like this to play well and play confidently, but at least in the realm of fingertip style aiming, I can promise you it does not get better than this. All of you who have been zeromouse users so far, even those of you who have just emailed me or commented and shared the enthusiasm that I have for this as well, when people reach out to me and they tell me they've been maining the zeromouse and they have so much fun using it, that is what it's all about. And now being able to not only package it with the best wireless hardware on the market, but also get it under 20 grams, I cannot wait for people to try this. I also want to be clear, this is not a sponsorship from Final Mouse, although it is on some level a conflict of interest. But yeah, I'm actually the one paying them tens of thousands of dollars for their new Falcon module to assemble and put into the zeromouse blade. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It's absolutely insane how far this thing has come. If nothing else, I've created my dream gaming mouse. But if you're also interested in picking one of these up, definitely subscribe, definitely sign up for email notifications on the zeromouse.co website. I cannot wait to put the finishing touches on this thing and send it out into the world.